This week on the show, we have a little bit of a twist in the moderation section here, but that shouldn't concern you because we have a regular episode, as always, containing authentication vulnerabilities in OpenBSD. NetBSD 9.0 RC1 is available. And we also cover a little how-to about running FreeNAS on a DigitalOcean droplet. We show you NomadBSD 1.3 and what it can do, as well as a report from E2K19 called Nobody Can Hear You Scream, and more in this week's episode of BSD Now. BSD Now, episode 330. Happy holidays all. Recorded for the 25th of December, which is Christmas Eve 2019. Hello, I'm your host, Benedikt Kreusling.
And Mariusz Zaborski.
Yes, we have a little twist today because we thought after like 330 episodes of continued recording every week, we should give Alan a little bit of a break.
I'm not sure about that, to be honest. Let's get him back here, you know?
Yeah. He's good at what he does. So, but this time he's not behind the microphone. He's doing other work, so he couldn't record this episode. And then I thought, it would be a bit boring doing this whole thing alone. And so I got me some guest moderator here, Mariusz.
Thank you for invitation me.
No problem. It would be very interesting to go through the episode here. And why don't you introduce yourself a little bit?
So in my daily work, I'm working at Fudo Security, where I'm a manager of development department. In my free time, I'm a FreeBSD committer since almost 5 years already. And my main interest is security, operating systems, and file systems. So I think I can answer a few questions when Alan is outside about ZFS. I didn't mention that I'm from Poland, so my accent may be quite different than you used to.
People probably won't know that Alan is gone when you answer the ZFS questions, and that's probably what most of us listeners care about. The nice thing also is that Alan can now listen to a BSD Now episode without knowing what's in the episode. So that's a new thing.
You know what? I'm wondering if Alan ever listened to any episode, you know, because some people don't like to listen to their own voice.
Yeah, that could be. But I guess Alan is busy enough to do other things in the meantime. But we can ask him when he's back.
You should ask him.
Okay. So let's get right into the episode. We have headlines, of course. The first one is maybe not such a good one, but nevertheless important. Authentication vulnerabilities in OpenBSD.
Yes, this was quite exciting vulnerability recently discovered in OpenBSD. It's quite scary because it's remotely exploitable in some of the applications that you may know, like SMTPD, LWD, or Radius. As there are some applications that may be also vulnerable, but we have to go case by case to analyze that. So we have a CVE for this vulnerability, and it goes like that. We discovered an authentication bypass vulnerability in OpenBSD authentication system. This vulnerability is remotely exploitable in SMTPD, LWD, and RadiusD, but its real-world impact should be studied on a case-by-case basis. For example, SSHD is not exploitable thanks to its defense in-depth mechanism. So this is quite exciting because I don't remember many remote exploitables bugs on OpenBSD. So let's go to the analysis of this bug. So OpenBSD uses BSD authentication, which is made up of a variety of authentication styles. The authentication styles currently provide are PassWD, which is a standard password and password verification method, which is basically verifying the password in master passvd file. We have also others like SKey or YubiKey. So for any given style, the program login style is used to perform the authentications. So when you want to authenticate, you run the login style command, And there is options to provide a service, which is basically the style that you want to authenticate. So, for example, if you want to use a passwd service, then you just provide the the -s passwd and your username to authenticate. This is the first piece of the puzzle. If an attacker specifies a username of the form -option, then can influence the behavior of the authentication program in unexpected ways. This is already a bug, but it's not exploitable. I mean, if you run this command and you can manipulate what style you can use, this is a bug, but it's not exploitable. If user don't support such style, you just say, okay, this user doesn't support that, so the authentication failed, everything is fine. But there is another application, which is basically the login passwd, which is used to authenticate the password authentication type. So in these applications, when the service arguments specify which protocol to use, we have 3 different protocols: login, challenge, and response. And the challenge protocol is silently ignored, but while report successful, as password style authentication is not challenge response based. This is the second piece of the puzzle. If an attacker specifies the username -s challenge, then the authentication is automatically successful and therefore bypassed. So here we have a standard misinterpreting between the option and the username. So attacker can provide the additional option to the login style command, and this additional option will be passed to the login passwd. And when this option will be -s challenge, then user will be automatically authenticate, because every challenge authentication through login passwd will be successful. In this CVE, we have like 5 different case studies. The simplest one to understand is basically the LDAP-D. So when you are doing the LDAP search command, which is basically ask the LDAP database about some queries, instead of providing the username, you provide the username -s challenge, and the authentication will automatically success. Yes, this is a big problem. I believe like I mentioned before, there wasn't many remote authentication errors in OpenBSD. It mostly depends on the application which you are using, but unfortunately, this was in the base authentication library which was used in the by the OpenBSD guys. There is also quite interesting analysis that the SSHD wasn't vulnerable to this bug, basically because during the connection hangs, because SSHD was waiting for login passwd to send a challenge, while login passwd waits for SSHD to send a response. So they was just deadlocking between themselves.
Waiting for each other.
Waiting for each other, yes.
Okay.
So there are three more bugs for the authentication. This is the most important because it's remotely exploitable. The rest of them was privilege escalations. One of them was, for example, for Xlog, and there was just insufficient set group ID check. So, you could just get additional group through as a user. So there was exploitable, but was not so critical that this one. The good news for OpenBSD is that they fix all those bugs in 40 hours after the initial contact. So, you can see in different projects that it took months or, even years to fix some bugs, and they did it in 40 hours. So this is quite impressive.
Yeah, that sounds like OpenBSD.
Yes, they get security quite serious.
Oh yeah. So people can rest easier this way, so they just need to apply the latest patches for those vulnerabilities?
They are all patched, I believe, for 6.5, because I believe OpenBSD is, and 6.4, because OpenBSD is supporting only 2 latest versions, if I remember correctly. So yes, please update your OpenBSD boxes and check if your services that you provide to the internet are secure and aren't vulnerable for this bug. Interesting thing, I also look into the code for this bug, and the patch for this bug was more or likely to separate the arguments of the functions with the username for the command. So instead of mixing the arguments and username, you have to provide double dashes now to provide the username to which you want to log in. So now if the command is sent, if the username is received by some socket or wherever, then always it's put it after the 2 dashes, which means that there shouldn't be any other options there.
Okay, understand. Yeah. See, with your security background, that's giving us much more information than we would usually get.
I'm happy about that.
yeah. We didn't pick this particular one, but yeah, it came up in our stream of news that we wanted to cover, so that fits well to your background.
To be honest, the OpenBSD, this bug in OpenBSD was quite loud about it in the security environment, because you don't see often such bugs, especially in OpenBSD.
But I guess they, since they fixed that already, they can now rest easy, and as long as people patch their boxes, that should also be fine.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on. Here's the next item. We have the first release candidate for NetBSD 9.0 available.
Oh.
And they list a couple of interesting things that they have. So the message starts... since the start of the release process 4 months ago, a lot of improvements went into the branch. More than 500 pull-ups were processed, so that's already quite a big number. This includes USB Net, which is a common framework for USB Ethernet drivers, AArch64 stability enhancements, and lots of new hardware support. Always good for NetBSD. Installer sysinst fixes and changes to the NVMM, the hardware virtualization interface.
I'm always quite surprised how many architectures is supported by NetBSD. That's quite a challenge to test everything on those so many different architectures. And
yeah, that's the impressive thing about NetBSD, so that they have this wide adoption. So they also write, we hope this will lead to the, in capitals or in bold, best NetBSD release ever, only to be topped by NetBSD 10 next year. So they list a couple highlights here for the release. The first item is support for ARM AArch64, which is the 64-bit ARM v8-A machines. They include the ARM server-ready compliant machines, which is SBBR plus SBSA. They also have enhanced hardware support for ARM v7-A, so that's good for the already existing ones. And the updated GPU drivers are there as well, with support for Intel Kaby Lake, so those are supported as well. They also have enhanced virtualization support and clarify that a little bit with support for advanced accelerated virtualization, which is NVMM. In previous episodes, we covered this a couple of times, but NVMM is an interesting hypervisor.
Yes, it is. I don't think I have before looked into it, but yes, it's looked quite interesting. Especially, I believe there was few presentations about it during the BeehiveCon this year, right?
Oh yes, yeah. They don't only cover Beehive itself, but also the other hypervisors that are out there in the BSD world.
And to be honest, the very interesting thing is that they updated ZFS to the newest version. So you can run ZFS on NetBSD, and this is quite exciting because really there are now many operating systems, and the major operating system that started to use ZFS as they maybe base file system.
Oh yeah, and then you can import pools and send your snapshots back and forth. So that's a good way to have. I mean, ZFS on all these architectures. I mean, maybe not all of them, but all these architectures that NetBSD supports that were not originally ported for ZFS. That's exciting.
Yes, I just wonder, how much RAM would need such architecture to support ZFS in, efficient way. Because I can imagine that it's hard to imagine that some small devices, really small devices, will be able to run ZFS with, few megabytes of RAM. But it's very interesting to see that.
They also have some more security stuff. They also support kernel ASLR. They have several kernel sanitizers, Kleak, KSAN, and QBSAN, and also support for userland sanitizers, as well as they did an audit of the network stack, which is interesting. So we covered that a couple episodes ago as part of Google Summer of Code. And they also have many improvements in their NPF, their own NetBSD PF implementation. So that's interesting to look at. They also have some reworked error handling and native command queuing support in the SATA subsystem. But again, everyone, this is not the final release candidate. This is still RC1. It's close, but it's not the final release, and we'll probably cover this in a future episode once it's out. But they write at the bottom here that please help out by testing 9.0 RC1 if you have some time. We love any and all feedback. Report problems through the usual channels, like submit a PR or write to the appropriate list. And more general feedback is welcome. Please mail the Relang team, and your input will help them to put the finishing touches on what promises to be a great release.
Sounds like very exciting release for them, really. A lot of new features. I'm really excited to see all the security features that they provided, especially the support for kernel address sanitization. I believe they work really hard to fuzz the kernel, so this is quite exciting work.
Yes, so they did a couple of work over the summer on as part of Google Summer of Code to fuzz certain things and make sure that the sanitizers find the right parts and not the wrong parts, and that made the code more stable, secure in some cases, and I guess that shines really when you have a big release coming up, when most of the things just work in the code and are not running into some weird error cases that are only touched if you go in this if statement or that other branch. So, yeah, that's cool. So in our news roundup here, we have found a tutorial for you if you have some time during the holidays to do some setup work, maybe. Here's a how-to that we found. It's a bit old already, but maybe it's still valid or interesting to you. Running FreeNAS on a DigitalOcean droplet.
It sounds like a perfect tutorial for a backup server based on FreeNAS.
And so it's fairly straightforward. So they have a little text at the beginning. ZFS is awesome. Well, we all know that. FreeBSD even more so. FreeNAS is the battle-tested, enterprise-ready, yet home user-friendly, software-defined storage solution which is cooler than deep space, based on FreeBSD and makes heavy use of ZFS. Their words.
The description, the enterprise-ready, yet home user-friendly, perfect description about the FreeNAS. Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, this is what they use here for just about any storage-related task. And, once you are familiar with the UI or have used it before, then it should be fairly familiar. They can go on, they write and on about what makes it great. But if you're here reading this tutorial, you probably know all that already and can skip ahead. So their concrete use case was they needed an offsite FreeNAS setup to replicate things to run some things, to do some stuff. Basically, their privately owned, tightly controlled NAS appliance in the cloud. So once they control from top to bottom and with support for whatever crazy thing they're trying to do, but since they're using DigitalOcean already as the main VPS provider, it seemed logical to run FreeNAS there. However, you can't. Well, while DigitalOcean supports many distros and pre-setup applications like OpenVPN, FreeNAS isn't a supported feature, at least not in the traditional way. So this is a bit of a hackish thing, but it works. So just to clarify, there are VPS providers which offer custom ISO installations. One they particularly like is Vultr, however. They wanted to do so on a DigitalOcean droplet just because. Yeah, it's a good experiment. So here's a little overview of what they're going through. The first thing is, of course, set up a FreeBSD-based droplet. Then they'll re-image that, the boot blocks with the FreeNAS ISOs so that they know, oh, I don't need to load FreeBSD, but I need to load the FreeNAS parts. Then the second thing is that they install FreeNAS on the second block device. That becomes important a little further down the road. And the third thing is, once done, they're going to do the old switcheroo. They're switching to re-image their original boot block device using the now FreeNAS installed second block device. So that's how they do the trick.
I believe before the work which was done by Colin, you also needed to do some tricks to run the FreeBSD on AWS, something like that, like boot from a different machine and try to install FreeBSD there.
Yeah, Colin did a lot of work there with AWS and Amazon to make that work and make FreeBSD available this way. And I think you can do pretty much the same there as well. So this is not limited to just this cloud provider. Since most of this stuff is graphical, we basically just go through a description here because, yeah, you can't see what we're looking at. But if you go through our show notes and click on the link, you will find all the instructions there. So the first thing is that they create a FreeBSD droplet. It doesn't have to be big. The one they use here is a $5 1 GB RAM one at the time of this writing, at least. I guess they dropped the prices a little bit by now. So this is just a simple VM. It doesn't need to be a big one to get started. They write in production you want at least 8 GB of RAM for ZFS and some of the things going on in the OS, but it's not too big of a requirement. So when you do that, you add a new block storage device with the installation targets. So that matches the size of the droplet boot device. So in this case, 25 gigabytes. This is a throwaway device. So this is important to know. And once you're done, you get rid of it and don't think about it anymore. So you spin up your droplet and log in, and then provide the FreeNAS ISO installation to it that you downloaded already with curl, or do it directly in the machine. Then you become root there and turn off the swap device. Geom will prevent you from thrashing your boot blocks there, so you kind of have to say to it, yes, I know what I'm doing here. So there's a sysctl to enable you to do that. And then you DD the installation ISO to the dev, in this case, VTBD0. This is the main boot block device. And once done, you reboot that machine. And ooh, magic, part 2 happens, because then you can start the FreeNAS installation on the second boot device. And so that runs through the installer that you probably have seen many times already. And then the installation process starts a little down the road. You get some progress bars to see that it's finished. And once that is done, you can then, of course, first tap yourself on the shoulder to this part, because you can now go to the next one, which is the third. You re-image now the boot block device using the FreeNAS installed block device. That sounds scary and difficult, but it's not. It's all quite simple from here. They're going to do the DD to our boot device. So that's dev VTBD0. With the block device, they're used as the FreeNAS target device. In this case, dev DA0. But first, we need to boot into something that we can DD from, because we're kind of in the between the chairs here. So to do that, you head over to the DigitalOcean control panel and shut down your droplet. And then under the destroy menu button, be careful there, choose to rebuild your droplet with the same base you used originally, and then boot into your droplet. And you can now verify that dev DA0 still exists. Just do an ls/dev. And then you can do the exact same steps you did in part 1, becoming root, turning off swap, and relaxing Geom's strict warnings here. And then you can just do dd dev DA0 onto dev VTBD0. That's a neat trick. And so next time you boot this thing, it will come up with the right FreeNAS. And then, ta-da, it give you the first installation steps, like setting up the network interface, and some of the GUI setup stuff is followed afterwards.
There was a lot of work to set up it, to be honest.
Yes, but in those days when this tutorial was written, it was necessary. Maybe today it's much easier. But I think it's important that people know about this switch installed into the second boot device or second disk device, and then just switch around once that is done.
Yes, I would love to see like DigitalOcean or any other provider provide, besides FreeBSD, also installation for FreeNAS, like out of the box. That would be something very interesting.
Yep, and then you have like your own NAS in the wild or in the cloud, and you can back up your stuff there if you're on the road, or just get to your files when you need to. But make sure to definitely secure this box enough so that no one else can get to those files.
Do you use FreeNAS for backupping systems?
So I have a combination of Nextcloud instance, a hosted one, which was offered to me a couple years ago with like, unlimited lifetime support, and I was like, yeah, in a couple hours you will shut down before I know it. But it's been running fine so far. They had a couple messy things in the past. For example, they once overwrote every file, no matter what type it was, with some kind of XML header. So even binary files, and it's like, why did you do that? And
did they have any backup system or something like that to restore the data?
Yeah, they had that, and they also provided a Z script that you could run to remove those like 24 characters of XML they put into your files, and so that restored the file as they were before.
It was only user data, or also like every binary, or
every binary, every image, every PDF, every whatever you had, or every text file. That's how I found out how long that string was there. I mean, the text files can still be read, but the other files are just garbled. And then I said, okay, let's write a little Z script to remove this stuff. And maybe a year after, they had like, your instance server crashed, and they had to reboot this thing. And then, since they were running on Linux, they had to do the whole FSCK cycle for like a 60 terabyte volume. And after a couple days, they had like provided updates instructions for, we're now in stage 3 of the FSCK, stage 3 of 5, and they're currently checking, I don't know, inodes or whatever. And we're like, seriously, use ZFS.
Exactly. This was my first thing. Why don't you use ZFS? It's perfect for that. Just forget about FSCK.
Yeah. So they offered in the meantime that they would restore your data to another instance, but even that restore took days because people had so many files in their Nextcloud instances. That was just funny, and they apologized and gave me some extra credit, but I make sure that I have a separate backup for these kinds of cases.
You should always have additional backup.
Yes. Oh yeah. Learned that the hard way. Do you use FreeNAS at home?
To be honest, I'm hardcore FreeBSD user, so I'm using FreeBSD as my NAS server. So I configured everything from the scratch, like iSCSI or Samba or whatever. So yeah, basically I configured everything on FreeBSD.
Yeah, it's if you know what you're doing, then it's fairly easy to do these things and add the services that you need.
I'm not sure if I know what I was doing, but I learned a lot during the time. So.
Yeah. So since I'm teaching my Unix class and I have a little section on ZFS there, a couple of weeks after that section, a couple of students came to me, hey, we did our storage servers at home now with ZFS. And I'm like, great, excellent. Yeah, it's cool. We didn't know that they could do all these things. And I said, see, that's why I teach it to you. So that's really great to see that they're now, like, everyone has files they don't want to lose anymore, and it just keeps growing. And if you don't put it on the right file system and volume manager, then you can get in trouble down the road after a couple of years, and then it's a lot of stuff to back up.
We are also running a Polish BSD user group. You mentioned a few times already it on the show, and the ZFS topic is always very trendy. Like a lot of people are interested in what is happening, and ZFS is now really, really exciting technology for many people.
Oh yes, yeah. And it's people like they don't normally are the sysadmin types, but they kind of understand. Okay, this is a pool. This is like a data set, and how you can configure those. So it's still very approachable, and understandable once you get to the basics?
It's taking some time to understand because the idea of ZFS is totally different than normal file system and volume manager. So yeah.
Okay, so back to the show. We also have in the news a new release of NomadBSD. So many people are like, what's that? I haven't heard about this too much. That's a new system on the block compared to the other ones. But it's nevertheless interesting. So from the website here, the About section tells us that NomadBSD is a persistent live system for USB flash drives based on FreeBSD. Together with automatic hardware detection and setup, it is configured to be used as a desktop system that works out of the box, but can also be used for data recovery, for educational purposes, or to test FreeBSD's hardware compatibility.
Wow, that sounds exciting.
Yeah, so this is what you would take to the computer store and check whether FreeBSD runs correctly on this box.
Oh, I didn't think about that, but this is a perfect use case.
Yeah. So, and since they do all the audio or the hardware detection, you can definitely see that that the screen resolution is there. You can suspend and sound is working, whatever you want. So in their release, they quote in the release notes what's new. They say that the base system has been changed from FreeBSD 12.0 to 12.1 release patch level 1. So they're chasing that. And due to a deadlock problem, FreeBSD's UnionFS has been replaced by UnionFS-Fuse. So that's file systems in user space. So they use that. The GPT layout has been changed to MBR. This prevents problems with Lenovo systems that refuse to boot from GPT if the Lenovo fix is not set, and systems that hang on boot if Lenovo fix is set. Yes, you have a Lenovo, right?
Yes, I have a ThinkPad X1. But to be honest, I'm booting from GPT, and I didn't need a Lenovo fix for that laptop.
Oh, good. So that's for the people who still need that one, they can use NomadBSD as well. Support for ZFS installation has been added to the NomadBSD installer. Excellent. So people can run that. The RC script for setting up the network interfaces has been fixed and improved. Okay, also good. And support for setting the country code for the wireless device is also been added. Yes, people in different regulatory areas need to set that. The next item they have is the auto configuration for running in VirtualBox has been added. So yeah, perfect test case. What's this NomadBSD? Let's run it in a VirtualBox and see what it does.
Yes, I looked a little bit into the code of NomadBSD just before the show, and I look what type of detection that was, and basically they are checking the SMBIOS on the of the machine. So if it's returned the VirtualBox, they are loading the additional drivers for VirtualBox.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's clever. Figure out what environment you're running in and then act accordingly.
Yes, it's very useful those days.
Yeah. Then a check for the default display has been added to the graphics configuration scripts. This fixes problems where users with Optimus have their NVIDIA cards disabled and use the integrated graphics chip instead. Okay, so they can use that. Oh, and by the way, the NVIDIA driver version 4.40 has been added. So that's a bit more fresh on the NVIDIA driver side. And they have a NomadBSD-DM config, which is a Qt tool for selecting the display manager theme and setting the default user and auto login has been added. Oh, cool. That sounds helpful. And they also have a script NomadBSD-add user, which is a Qt tool for added pre-configured user accounts to the system has also been added. Then they added Czech translations. So that's also good for people in that country or the people speaking that language. And NomadBSD, the NomadBSD logo designed by Ian Grindley has been changed, so that's a fresh logo as well. They also support localized error messages and localizing the password prompts. Okay, so that people can read what's in Polish password.
Hasło.
See, that's our educational value that we provide here.
How is it in Germany?
It's the same, but with a T at the end, so it's Passwort.
Oh, okay.
Not much difference.
D or das?
Passwort?
Yeah.
Just password.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Those computer terms sometimes don't have a proper DADI DAS article. but sometimes we make up the thing that sounds much better than the other ones. So yeah, it's probably das Passwort.
We should start another, as podcast about languages only.
Yeah. Oh yes. Oh, I think people would love that. Like, what's this term in your language? So they added some templates for starting other desktop environments to xinitrc. Okay, so people don't have to stick with one; they can select between them. And some extra scripts that help users to configure a multi-head system. Ah, cool! So you have multiple displays. And important, the Xorg driver for newer Intel GPUs has been changed from Intel to the mode setting one. And proc has been added to FSTAP, so that is mounted already when the system starts. And some smaller issues were also fixed. Oh, they added some extra support for multiple keyboard layouts, also good if you want to test those, especially if you're in a computer store and want to check whether all the keys are on your keyboard. Then they have removed two things, the pale moon in the www area from the ports has been removed, and Male Thunderbird has also been removed. And they added Audio Audacity, which we're using to record this episode, by the way, and Deskutil/Orage. Never heard about that one.
I also didn't heard about that, but I'm kind of surprised that they removed Thunderbird. It's kind of, everybody used Thunderbird those days, right?
Maybe they have a space issue, but it's fairly small. But maybe they found a better email client.
Maybe.
They have Password Manager, FPM2 changed and replaced that by KeyPass-XC. Mail Sulfide has been replaced by Mail/Clause Mail. Maybe that's the Clause Mail client that they're using. And they added a simple screen recorder from the multimedia section as well. So yeah, that sounds like a fine release. I will definitely give the ISO a go on a system that can hopefully boot this thing. I'm fairly sure it does.
You can just use it on the VirtualBox just to test it and see how it looks. You should visit the NomadBSD website. It looks very beautiful. If you go to the screenshot sections, there are really nice desktop environments. I believe it's just out of the box how it looks. So it's pretty nice.
Yeah, I learned that the hard way, like setting everything up, like notifications and taskbar and all these things that you kind of take for granted nowadays. They've done that already. And so
I still didn't configure that. I'm using a WMI, so it's Styling Manager. It's quite old, but I'm very used to it.
Oh yes, yeah. I still need to learn a little bit more about tiling window managers. Yeah, maybe next time we'll meet. We'll sit together in the corner and you show me that stuff.
When you learn a lot of shortcuts, the productivity is just rock sky.
So you never have to touch the mouse again?
Yeah, basically. Only when you try to, visit some websites.
Yeah, well, that's, yeah. Okay, that was NomadBSD, and we also have, in this segment, a hackathon report from the E2K19.
I believe this is a OpenBSD hackathon, right? It's E2K19 hackathon, it's called. And this post was written by Claudio Jaker, who was working on X509 in OpenBSD. So after 2 years, it was once again time to pack skis and snowshoes, put a satellite dish onto a sledge, and hike through the snowy Rockies to the Egg Lakes hut.
I remember. Yeah, the OpenBSD folks did that a couple of years ago, and so they just repeat that experience.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that they already been there.
Or at least a couple of them were.
Okay. So I didn't really have much of a plan what I want to work on, but there were a few things I wanted to look into. One of them was RPKI client and the fact that I was so incredibly slow. Since Bob Beck was around, I started to ask him innocent X509 questions, as if there are innocent X509 questions, mainly about the abuse of the X509 store in RPKI client. Pretty soon, it was clear that RPKI client did it all wrong, and most of the X509 verification had to be rewritten. Instead of only storing the root certificates in the store and passing the intermediate certs as a chain to the verification function, RPK client threw everything into it. The X509 store is just not built for such an abuse, and so it was no wonder that it was so slow. Lucky me, I pulled Benno with me into the dark hole of libcrypto code. He managed to build up an initial div to pass the chain as a stack of X509, and together we managed to get it working. A big thanks goes to Ingo, who documented most of the functions we had to use. Have a look at StackOff and skpop3 to understand why Benno and I slowly turned crazy. Our next challenge was to only load the necessary certificate revocations list into the X509 store CTX. While doing those changes, it becomes obvious that some of the data structures needed better lookups functions. Looking up certificates was done using a linear lookup, and so we replaced the internal certificate and CRL tables with red block trees for fast lookups. Durat also joined the RPK client commit fest and changed the output code to use rename so that the file are replaced in atomic operations. Thanks to that, RPK client can now be safely run from cron.
Cool.
I did not plan to spend most of my weekend hacking on RPK client. I'm really not surprised about that. The X509 code must be horrible, really horrible. But in the end, I'm happy that I did, and the result is fairly impressive. Working with libcrypto code, and especially X509, was less than pleasant. I'm really not surprised. Our screams of agony died away in the snowy Rocky Mountains and made Bob deep dive into UVM with a smile, since he knew that Benno and I had it worse.
Okay.
In case you wondered, thanks to all changes at A2K19 hackathon, RPK client improved from over 20 minutes runtime to validate all VPRs to roughly 1 minute to do the same job. A factor 20 improvement. He would like to thanks to Theo, Bob, and Howie to make this possible.
That's a successful one.
Yeah, getting this improvement from 20 minutes to 1 minute, that sounds like really good statistic and really good improvement for them.
Very sure, yeah. So they can enjoy the much quicker validation times now. Yeah, and I think we'll see more hackathon reports as they become available in future episodes. So that's always interesting to hear what the OpenBSD folks have come up in a silent, or maybe not so silent, but snowy hut in the mountains. So yeah.
The title of the post is "Nobody Can Hear You Screaming." So maybe there is, they are not silent, but nobody hears that,
Yeah. These are the thankless things that most people, or as users, don't see what kind of effort went into this stuff. I mean, you mentioned that X509 is very horrible as a code, but someone has to do it and make it work.
Yes, I'm really full of. I'm really surprised that he decided to do that, because I don't know how somebody would force me to look into that code. I'm really not sure is it possible. But this is also interesting, because this show that the open source projects not only works on the internet, but they also gathering together to do cool stuff, like going to Elk Lake's hut and hack together. So
yeah, it's like hanging out with your friends, having a good time, and having something great at the end as a result. That's also good. So yeah, definitely kudos to the OpenBSD folks in their hackathons, and the people will see updates coming down the line when there's progress being made. All right, time for the Beastie Bits this week. We found a couple items. As the year comes to a close, this gets difficult and difficult. But we have a couple things here. So the first one is that the FOSDEM 2020 BSD DevRoom schedule has been published. So let's look at this briefly. So Rodrigo Osorio is organizing that, like in the last couple years, and so he's in charge of the room for that day. This time it's on the Sunday, so don't miss this one. The foundation will also, the FreeBSD Foundation will also have a table on the Saturday and Sunday, and there's also a one-day FreeBSD hackathon on the Friday before FOSDEM starts. For people who are interested, they can find more information on the freebsd.org website. But let's go through the schedule here. So the first one is a welcome to the BSD Dev Room by Rodrigo, followed by Orchestrating Jails with Nomad and Pot by Luca Pizzamiglio. I remember. Yeah, so he did talk about this at the EuroBSDCon Dev Summit this year, and he introduced how he can create like Docker or let's say Kubernetes-like environment with Nomad and Pot that has a lot of potential, and gathered a couple of interested people in there. So I guess he made some more progress, and that's the result of his work here.
I always look forward for any tools that really improves jails configurations and managing, because the default tools are quite complicated and it's taking a while to learn them.
Yeah, especially if you have multiple jails and you need to all juggle them, and that at a certain number, it kind of you lose the oversight and have no idea, is this in this jail or in that one, or did I restart the wrong one or whatever? Yeah, maybe that helps us orchestrating that a little bit better.
So for now, on my main desktop, I'm still using my traditional jail commands to, just still get feeling. But when I'm doing some VPN or VPS servers, then I'm mostly using IOCage for that.
Yeah, for new stuff, I also use IOCage, and some of the older jails, I mean, they've been set up this way and run for a while now, so they run with the classical command line tools that they are available in the system. Then we have OpenSMTBD in the clouds and NetBSD, not just for toasters. That sounds interesting. Followed by Deb Goodkin's talk, FreeBSD Around the World. So she's giving an update from the foundation side, where we were in 2019 by that time, promoting FreeBSD and what kind of use cases we saw and what people are working on. So that's exciting to see. Then we have FreeBSD and LLVM support by David Collier, I think that's how you pronounce it, and gives us an update what is LLVM and how it integrates into FreeBSD. The next sounds interesting. Break your BSD kernel. And I think you mentioned earlier that you know this one, or at least that the name sounds interesting or familiar enough.
So Maciej Grochowski sounds like a Polish name, I believe he did a presentation during the EuroBSDCon about AFL and Keikov, how he was fuzzing the NetBSD kernel.
Yes, yeah. Now I remember his name. Yeah. That could be very well him doing a bit of fuzzing work in the BSD kernel. Then we have KDE on FreeBSD. So Adrian de Groot has been doing that work a long time now, and in the port system, keeping FreeBSD on KDE on FreeBSD updated, and so he's reporting on what's the newest progress there. Then they have a NetBSD audio talk about a userland perspective. Oh, interesting. Discussing the usage of NetBSD's audio API and third-party software. Oh, that sounds interesting. The second to last is X11 and Wayland, A Tale of Two Implementations. Oh, Raichu is back. Okay, that's good. He did a talk, I think, 2 years ago about dtrace, and that was very popular.
You mean the dtrace on NetBSD, or?
Was it NetBSD, or he did some special dtrace work? I don't recall right now, but could be, yeah, that he did it on NetBSD. And the last talk is graphing FreeBSD disk utilization with Prometheus. Writing a Prometheus GStat exporter. Oh, that will be interesting for the sysadmins to see, which disk is doing most of the work.
Yeah, it's something that you may use on your course about ZFS as well.
Yes, so you can see, although there are 5 disks in this pool, or how many there will be, this one disk is doing most of the load, or this disk is very slow, so maybe this one is dying, or could be replaced with a faster one. So that can all be determined from GStat, for example.
So BSD DevRoom on FOSDEM looks very interesting. I'm quite surprised because there are many presentations from NetBSD. You don't see those days so many from them. So it seems like the new release give them something to share about, to talk about.
Yeah, that could be the thing that they say, okay, now we have a release, we might as well show to the people in the world what we can do with that, and or what other things are capable in NetBSD. And I think Rodrigo also tries to balance the BSDs in that room, so it's not just this one BSD every time. So seems quite well balanced this time. So I'm looking forward to that. Definitely try to attend the FOSDEM dev room, or FOSDEM itself, because it has not just BSD, but also all the other open source projects are there, either with a table or their own talk or their own dev room. And they also stream those events. You really can't make that, so you can watch the recordings. And of course, later the videos will be available. The FOSDEM folks are quite fast in making them available after the conference.
So BSD DevRoom is on February the 2nd, right?
Yeah, it is.
So yes, please join the BSD DevRoom.
Then we have a news item about an easy Minecraft server on FreeBSD. So that's on the FreeBSD Foundation's website. So this is basically how you can quickly, but not too difficult, set up a little server for maybe the kids or for the people that are still doing the Minecraft thing. And it's fairly straightforward. It's just a couple of commands and a couple of steps. And before you know it, you have your own Minecraft server up, and you battle the zombies or whatever goes on in that.
I believe you kill zombies in Minecraft and try to build something, right?
Maybe the building is more important than the killing, but I wouldn't know. I just saw a couple of things and I was like, okay. It's modern Lego, but yeah, it's fun. I see people enjoy that very much. So check out that how-to and build your own Minecraft server. Then we have, an interesting commit from the FreeBSD list of commits. It's the stats framework in the TCP stack.
Oh, that's looking very interesting. I believe Netflix did the original work for this.
I think they sponsored that one. And so what's this about? It basically allows more insight into what the TCP stack is doing. So from the commit message, this makes it possible to retrieve per connection statistical information, such as the retrieve window size, the RTT, the round trip time, or the good put. Well,
I'm not sure what that is.
Something in TCP. Using a newly added TCP_stats get sock option. Yep. And extract them using the stats volstat fetch API. So they tell us to see the net TCP RTT port for an example consumer of this API. So you need that port installed to look into it. And compared to this existing TCP info system, the main differences are that this mechanism is easy to extend without breaking the API, which is always good to not do, and provides statistical information instead of raw snapshots of values at a given point in time. And stats is more generic and can be used in both userland and the kernel. Oh, cool. So it's not just limited to the TCP stack. Yeah, so I guess we'll see more about this work in maybe a future BSD conference when they talk about this. And so, yeah, this was sponsored by Clara and Netflix. Oh, and then we have a picture. We found this. Sometimes we found weird stuff, but also interesting stuff on Twitter. So here's a tweet from Edwin Kramer. Posting, colleague of mine asked the other day if I could possibly remember how I set up a FreeBSD server back in 2008.
Wow, that was a while ago.
Yeah. Oh, we're getting old. Yeah. So he writes, I took a look at the box and found this. That's just over 11 years shoveling IP packets left, right, and center.
Wow.
He posted a picture, just an uptime screenshot, and it has like 4,017 days.
That's very interesting, but also quite scary, running FreeBSD 7.0 without updates for such a long time. That's I always feel divided when I see such picture, because seeing so many days running on the box running for so many days, it's very exciting, and it's amazing achievement. Another thing, that then there is a small security guy inside me and say, what about the updates? That's
yeah, is this box really not connected to the internet, or
he said that it's shelving IP packages left and right, so I hope it's a private IPs.
Yeah, just in the local network. Not that there are also exploits there, but yeah, hopefully they are fine in this way. And luckily that BSD can do, or FreeBSD can do this uptime, and even the load on this box is not very, very high. So that should be fairly good. The next item is sysget. Have you heard about this?
No, I never heard about that.
It's new for me as well. So they describe it as a front end for every package manager.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, this is on GitHub. And so there's a huge list of supported package managers. So it's basically a bridge that lets you use one syntax to every package manager on every Unix-based operating system.
Wow, so you finally have one tool, and you have to remember only one syntax to one tool to install on every box you want some ports or tools, that's applications.
It seems like, and that's what they write also as a description. You probably all know the problem when you are on a new distro and don't know anything about the package manager. With sysget, you just need to remember one syntax for every package manager. And so you just install sysget. Hopefully you can do that on this new distro. But once you have that, you can do all the things for apt, DNF, yum, zipper, package, npm, pip3, and all the others, Mac ports as well. And the command examples here. So it's sysget, a bit more typing, but that's why we have tab keys and tab completion. Sysget search, and then a search query. Sysget install, the package name. Or to remove a package, it's sysget remove. So that's fairly easy to understand.
It's very similar to the package that you know from FreeBSD. So
yeah. I'm sticking with package for shorter typing.
Yeah.
But yeah, the idea is good. And once you hop between different systems, you just don't have to remember, is this pip now, or what am I using here? So just use sysget.
Yeah, this might be very convenient. I'm just looking at the website, and they support only two languages, English and German. Are you the author of this tool?
No, I had nothing to do with that. Well, maybe people want to contribute languages, so they can send pull requests or get in touch. And maybe this is becoming more widespread adoption. Does it also support like package source? I didn't see that in the list.
I didn't see that as well, to be honest.
Yeah, because that has a huge user base, and so I guess they want to cater to those as well.
So if you're looking for a small project for a weekend, then maybe you want to look into the sysget tool and add support for the package source.
So that's a good start, and a lot of people will be happy to use it then, maybe. And our last item, that's more for the holiday types that don't want to work on anything. We found a website called PlayOnBSD, and they have a cross-BSD shopping guide.
Yes, this is a very interesting project which trying to gather all the games that you can run on the on the BSD in general. I believe it's mostly done by guys from OpenBSD, although many of the games that you will see on this list you also can run on the FreeBSD, especially the games that are using the port/engine, which is called FNAFI, or however you spell it.
I think Alan pronounced it FNAFI. FNAify?
Yeah, I don't know, to be honest.
It's not very easy.
I will ensure you that it should work.
Yeah, okay. Well, what else do we need?
Because I ported it to the FreeBSD, but it was ported from OpenBSD. So yeah,
Oh, good.
try to use it. And if you run into some troubles, just send me an email or.
Yes, then everyone knows now where to go to.
I believe it was a while ago, but I believe like 8 or 9 months ago, you cover my blog post when I was talking about porting this tool.
Oh yes, yeah, could very well be. We're always happy to report from your writings in your blog. So could very well be that we covered this. And so they have here a list of all the games that are working. And some of them, like 60 games, are currently on sale on GOG.com. So you can maybe get a little discount for your favorite game that you used to play or always wanted to finish and never had the time, and now you have. So there's a couple of cool titles there that I remember. No time to play them, but all the memories are coming back just browsing through this list.
I can really recommend you the Stradivari. It's very interesting game. Did you play in it?
Never heard about it. What does it?
Oh, really? This is a game with a story that you are a software developer and you don't want to work with computers anymore. So you go to farm and start, doing carrots and cows and so on. So it's pretty funny.
That's what most people say. Like if they have a bad day in IT, I'm going into gardening or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, so check that out if you have some time over the holidays for playing a couple games under the BSDs, because you can. It's working now, thanks to the porting efforts and the people who wrote the software.
Yes, to be honest, the OpenBSD guy puts much more effort than me to make it working. I'm only ported that, so I believe the nickname was THRF. So this is the guy who write the tool.
Yeah, so we're all thankful for the people who are doing the ports work, because that makes it possible to play these or use the software under the BSDs. All right, it's time for the feedback and questions this time. We're running a bit low at the end of the year with feedback and questions, so you should always send us more so we can fill this episode part. It's feedback@bsdnow.tv, and that could contain all the show ideas, topics, comments that you have, and maybe blog posts that you found about BSDs that are interesting that we missed. So send all to this address. And people have sent, we have two this time. So the first one is Pat, and Pat is asking about the proper disk drive type for ZFS. So Pat writes, hi Alan and Benedict, in this case, Marius and Benedict. I plan to set up a home server shortly, powered by FreeBSD and ZFS, of course. And I was wondering if you had any advice when it comes to hard drives. Are consumer-grade hard drives okay for 24/7 use, or are enterprise-level drives a must from your own use cases? Also, do you mind sharing your opinions on whether hard drives should be left spinning versus allowing them to spin while not in use?
From my point of view, I'm using HP microserver with 4 disks, and I'm basically doing only like backupping stuff, or putting them some photos, videos, or whatever, basically like a NAS. And to be honest, when I'm using ZFS, I just decided to buy the cheapest possible disk on the market, and I'm running it 24/7, but when I'm sleeping, I'm not using it, so it's just running all the time, but the load isn't very big on it. And I configured it like 3 years or 4 years ago, and everything works. I never even changed one disk on it. So it's pretty nice. It's 4 disks, so I configured it in RAID-Z1. And yeah, that's basically it's working. I can recommend you a Backblaze company, which is posting a very interesting statistic about the disk usage. What is percentage of disk that are broken or get broken during the time? So if you want to see some statistics, real numbers, then go to Backblaze. I think they're doing this quarterly. So just look into the newest statistic from them.
So ZFS is definitely a good thing for because it doesn't have to work on the enterprise level drives. It does definitely, but with all the checks and extra security things it does to make sure that your drive and your hard saved data will be consistent enough. It can also run on, like Mariusz said, you can buy cheap drives and run with them for many years without problems, because ZFS is doing all the checking and the checksumming, making sure that all your files will be consistent as soon as you save it on ZFS.
Yeah, and I believe that you will, if it's for home usage, I believe you will not have such workload that you will be using this enterprise disk enough to get the cost of it.
And so what about the spinning up and putting the drive to sleep for a while, or that feature?
To be honest, I never used that feature. So yeah, they are just spinning around. So.
Yeah, I remember a couple of years ago, people like recommended, yes, you need to park the heads properly and, never shut down the machine because the spin down and spin up will like shock the drive and it gets unstable and gets older quickly. And I never thought this would be, maybe in the past, but even hard drives have evolved and there's new technology in there that made it a bit more resilient to these kind of things.
I remember the presentation from Sun Microsystem when there was a guy who was screaming at the disk, and it was showing how the disk getting slower. But there was like I don't know, like 80 disk or something like this. So
it was a bigger RAID, yeah.
Yeah, it was quite big RAID. So if you will use like 4 or 6 disks, you should be fine with normal consumer disk, in my opinion.
And if you have to shut down your NAS for the night maybe and just wake it up every day, I don't think that all the disks will be damaged. If maybe one disk dies, you have enough redundancy. If you build it in like a RAID Z1 or RAID Z or RAID 10, then there's enough redundancy. If you are that unlucky that maybe one disk dies, then you can replace that and still have your files back. So I'm not particularly worried about if you really have to spin up and down the drives all the time that they will get older or that the data on the files will not be read anymore. ZFS is there to help you, and if you back up that pool to a separate system, then you should be fine restoring those files. Hope that answers your question. So go cheap if you don't have the money, or you don't necessarily have to spend the money for enterprise stuff. ZFS will run just fine. Okay, the next question came from Brad about a ZFS Rosetta Stone of sorts. Brad writes, "Hello, Benedict, Mariusz," I replace Alan here, "and JT, our producer. I'm rereading Alan and Michael W. Lucas's ZFS books to refamiliarize myself before delving into the Jails book. Good endeavor. Even after all of these years, there's so much information. The books are still like drinking from a fire hose, even after all these years. Yeah, I keep them close. You can revisit them a couple times. Yeah. So for Brad here, the problem in ZFS is threefold. First, he generally does a tiny subset of ZFS commands only. Yeah. So when I need to do something on that list, I have to search. Second, ZFS can be like one of those Matryoshka nesting dolls. Commands can be so similar, for instance, ZFS list and zpool list, yet have different outputs. This ZFS is so darn reliable that there are many things that I don't do for years. Last week, I did my first drive replacement in years.
I doubt that you had an enterprise disk,
Yeah. See, that's connecting to the previous question. So he's compiling notes as he encounters things in ZFS, but would like to see any kind of Rosetta Stone document with as many of the more common tasks and information in a short form document. Is there any such thing out there?
From my perspective, I didn't see anything like that. There is a lot of blog posts about ZFS and so on. So if you are willing to do such thing, you really should do. But to be honest, I really feel your problem, because for me, I always mess up if the F or DU is showing compressed data or uncompressed data, the size of the data. So for me, the best practice was to put all of this into the block, that I can, help myself and maybe authors to, find those stuff. So maybe a blog is also a good idea for you, or just put, all the nodes you have or on some GitHub or whatever. And, there will be people who will be very happy that they find such thing.
Oh, yes, yeah. And you can see, I found this one command output like 50 times, and then, yes, it must be the correct one and not just this one single source you kind of don't trust. But the more people blog about this, or the more information you find, the more easier it is to find, and making sure that these commands are still the ones that are doing the work.
Some tools also change the output. For example, the zipple list recently get an additional column with the size of the checkpoint. So, you have to be careful always to check that. And, if you will push such a document and to the GitHub, or you start blogging about it, I believe that Alan and Benedict will present it on BSD Now,
Oh, yes, yeah. Definitely. Or maybe you search for ZFS cheat sheet, for example. Be careful with some of the older commands, maybe. But yeah, if you don't have one, don't find one, then start your own and maybe put it on GitHub so people can contribute to that. And then over time, we have something that everyone can use. And maybe you give that to the ZFS people and they can share it on zfs.org maybe, or openzfs.org nowadays. But yeah, maybe other people are struggling with the same things. So what I mostly use is ZFS list-o space and show me the compression factor. And the other commands are basically, create a data set that's just so muscle memory now. It's just normal. I don't have to look that up anymore. But if it's some obscure option in like ZFS send maybe that I don't do every day, I definitely need to consult the man page, of course, or the books. That's why they are out there.
Yes, you always should look into the man page because there are some options that will maybe change or they may disappear from some reason.
Or if I'm not sure about what the result might be, many of the ZFS commands have these dry run outputs where you can provide -n will simulate what ZFS will do without doing it. And so you can make sure, this is really the destroy command that I wanted to run. And this is how many data sets maybe or snapshots are affected by that.
Oh, that is so useful, especially for adding additional drivers to the pool, messing up this command may be problematic for you in the future.
Yeah. We're all waiting for the device removal feature to be available.
I believe the new ZFS it has already, right?
Oh, yeah, I think there should be something in there. Even more reason to get this in 2020, hopefully. So yeah, but definitely find something that is, or start your own little Rosetta Stone for, how do I display the disk size? Or how do I display the pool information? So small things like that. And over time it grows. And then you have your own little reference.
Yes, this is always something that is very surprising. Was very surprising for me because before I started blogging, it was like, this is so obvious. Everybody knows that, right? No, nobody has that problem, And this isn't how world works. Really, if you have this problem, probably a lot of people have the same problem like you.
Oh yes, yeah. And see, you get covered on this show for, if not only that, and you never know what people come by and read your blog, and I'm very thankful that you provided enough information to get them going. All right, that's the questions that we have for this episode. So thanks for listening to this episode. Happy holidays, of course, And big thanks to Marius for helping out in this episode.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, maybe we'll do another thing like this if people respond to that. So Alan can get a little bit more holidays. Or you do one episode with Alan. That could also be interesting.
You want some holidays, I see.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I deserve a break. But next time, Alan will be back. And so you never know. He was replaced in this one episode.
Maybe he will even not notice that,
Yeah, it could be. I can ask him, hey, Alan, where were you last week?
Or you can say, Alan, that was a very good show. You did a very good job this time.
Yes, yeah. Oh, yeah, that I will definitely do, yeah. So, yeah, thanks again for helping out here. And, where can people find you on the internet, beside your blog?
So I'm blogging, and I'm also having a Twitter account. It's pretty active. So twitter.com Oshogbo, SHOGBO VX. So it's very hard, but if you Google Mariusz Zaborski, you should find me.
Okay, yeah. So having been on the show, previous people that we interviewed, they always, or many of them, I saw that their follower accounts were exploding or increasing at least. So that's probably what happens to you. And we close this episode. Again, happy holidays.
Happy holidays, guys.
And see you next week.